All right, we would like to introduce Becca. Her home group is here at a new spiritual family. Her sobriety date is February 2nd, 2024. Becca, asking you to come on in and share your story. I'll see you on the other
Hi,
side.
can you hear me? Hi. Hi, family. Hi, everybody. Okay, stop shaking, stop shaking. Oh my gosh. Um, the more if you guys give me hearts and stuff, that helps me sometimes, like, uh, not be so nervous. So yeah, I'm just like I'm begging for thank you. There we go. I know it's not the same if you ask for it. I don't care. I'm a sucker for that type of stuff. So no, I love you guys. I have been nervous about this for a while, but then I don't know, kind of like leading up to it today, I had a good day today. I slept most of the day today. I didn't mean to. I meant to get up early and, write some notes and prepare myself and practice in the mirror and do all the things that uh, was suggested and that I had done for the last. See, I had to completely change my story because my story changed completely in the last week. Because, sometimes like there was a curveball at you. Um, And the great thing is I have a program that I can use when stuff like that happens. When my entire life and belief system really got flipped on its head. Um, I was able to navigate that. And not only was it like the last thing on my mind, um, I was calm. I was happy. I knew that I understood that God knew what he was doing and I followed his directive. And it was so easy. That communication was clear because I identified what the blockage was. Because of this program, I was able to, in the experience I had of serenity, because I had experienced that. And that is something that I was able to experience because of this family, this group that I'm speaking in right now. That's what helped save me from a potentially very bad situation. So before I get into all that, though, and I will say, I think most of the people who have been here and know me are aware that I do have ADHD. Not using that as an excuse. I'm just reminding myself of that because I tend to get off topic. I'm not going to spend, no, you know what? This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to say this. I got sober. I think that, people talk about our childhoods a lot. And my childhood was mostly good. Um, as far as what went on within my family. There's some stuff that's kind of like, I don't know, I'm not ready to unpack fully yet. Um, but overall, I was so lucky. I was so blessed to have a family that loved me and supported me. My parents did get divorced when I was 10. Um, and then there were some issues after that. My mom remarried. They had split custody. My dad also remarried, and I went back and forth between the two households, which for someone like me is very disruptive because I'm someone who needs a routine or anything that makes me go back and forth is very disorienting. And like, even it doesn't matter how on top of my game I am, um, it will just screw me up. Like, I can get completely situated in one place, organized, and then I have to get up and leave and go to another place. It doesn't matter if I'm going back to an organized place. Usually I'm not. Um, I'm just going to lose all my progress. So that's kind of, I feel like in a way, it kind of set me up for failure a little bit in high school. Um, because I started really having issues in high school and I wasn't medicated or anything. I wasn't diagnosed until um, it was after my daughter was born. And that's when I started being treated for it. It was right before I went to nursing school. So while I barely was able to graduate high school, I actually did really, really well in nursing school. I graduated at the top of my class. I scored like really high on the exit exam. I was actually the highest scorer in the history of the school at the time. Um, which for me, that was significant because like I had it in my head that I had become stupid because when I was younger, this is before the ADHD symptoms really started kicking in. I was really, really smart. I was like a child prodigy almost. And my parents, like my mom especially, put so much weight on that. And my grandfather, oh my God, my grandfather was obsessed with Yale. He lived around the corner from Yale University. And he was convinced I was gonna, have a full scholarship to Yale. There was gonna be a building named after me and all this stuff. And like, you know, because I was a child genius or whatever. And then, I get to high school and I can barely, pass. I felt like I had become stupid. Um, but it was just the executive dysfunction. And but it was also overall dysfunction that was starting to come up because I started self-medicating at a pretty early age when I was around like oh, I guess that actually wasn't that early when I'm thinking about it. Um, but it was around like my senior year of high school. Um, that was when I basically stopped living at home. Um, I moved into the first place I moved into, prior to this, I do want to say, I had some pretty significant traumas. I do want to acknowledge that, not spend too much time on it, but I think it's important to understand that in the context of the rest of my story. I trigger warning if you're sensitive to topics about sexual violence. It was a rape when I was 10 years old. It was also it was a corrective rape. Um, I am primarily homosexually attracted and had been caught doing stuff with my childhood best friend by her father. That rape was in punishment for both of us. Um, and I had another experience that was similar. It wasn't similar, like it wasn't a corrective thing, but it was a rape that was associated with me being gay. Um, and so that's why it's really, really hard for me to talk about. And it's one of the biggest reasons I drank. Um, and because I felt so deeply, deeply, deeply uncomfortable and scared in my own skin of being found out for who I was. And so the only way around it was I found loopholes. And those loopholes were, hey, guess what? Under certain conditions and with certain men, I can make it work. It's not like I have sexuality is a spectrum and it's a bit fluid and I don't want to get into all of it, but there were ways that I could make a heterosexual relationship work. So my entire life was dedicated to finding that because I knew it was going to be really, really difficult to find one, but I also needed one because I was terrified of being found out. And this persisted, like despite all of the advances with, people being so accepting, it's an internalized thing. Um, that's just, and it's because I think of what happened when I was young. But I also think, you know, these things are things that I've now heard other queer people talk about. And this is this is where my sobriety story is really interesting. Um, well, I guess we can't get to that though. Shoot, see, this is what I do. I'm going too far into the future. We'll get to that later. But yeah, it's just really when you hear how I entered sobriety, you'll understand the kind of irony of it. But I digress. We are going back to my high school, senior year of high school. I was, so the first place I moved into was, oh, sorry. And then prior to that, I was in a group home because it's a long story, but there was like, long story, some stuff with my family. And I was actually on a walk from that group home and I got lost again, serious ADHD, like not medicated, in my own world and just no sense of direction. This is before we had smartphones or anything like that. And this man in an SUV came and picked me up, asked me if I needed help. He said he knew where the shelter was that I was staying at. I was trying to get there before curfew because I was trying to be perfect so I could go back home. And basically he said he knew where the shelter was. And I remember thinking like, he has Colorado license plates. Why does he know where a youth shelter is? Like nobody knows where it is. But I got in the car anyway, and it did not end well. Obviously, I was taken by him to two different locations and held by him for approximately 12 hours. I was considered a missing person, and I was repeatedly sexually assaulted by him. And he, at one point, it seemed that he was like contemplating killing me. So that was a very haunting memory that I have. Like, yeah, but it was also just something I kind of got over at the time or tried to. I just completely, because that was like my junior year of high school, and I went and I started my senior year, and I'm at this alternative school, which is like an hour away from the town where I had been living, because I did eventually go back home. And so I liked hanging out with my friends more than I liked hanging out with my parents. So I eventually just got an apartment there. We was above a liquor store, incidentally, with like four guys who were like, they were like frat boys, but they were not in a fraternity, if that makes sense. They were that type. Just had porno magazines laying around, you know, like just no fucking manners whatsoever, or really gross to me. And you know, I was, but they also had they had alcohol and they partied. So I tolerated it because that was around the time I started realizing that, if you tolerated that type of stuff or, went along with things or played into people's whatever, like you could get free alcohol. And that became a pattern of behavior for me. I would surround myself with people who were scummy because they gave me, free stuff, just in exchange for my company. And that's, thinking back, that's such a sad thing to say, and it's a sad thing to do with myself. Um, it shows how little I viewed other people, how little I viewed their worth as well as my own. But that's what I was like when I went into my active addiction. And it took over who I was. It eroded my spirit because I had been a good person. And I felt like the more and more time went on and the more stuff happened, the more I self-medicated, the more I did stuff that I was ashamed of. And the cycle just continued. But so anyways, going back to this time period in my life, I was in high school. Like I said, I was at this alternative school. Oh no, there's thunder and lightning. I hope there's not a thunderclap while I'm doing the story. So I graduated and decided to take a gap year, which ended up being like, I basically just, nobody helped me like apply for college. And I was just expecting someone to be like, hey, Becca, here's how you apply for college. Like I took no initiative on my own, in fairness, but like also I think, or I did visit one, I think, but it was just something that never really pursued and thought about. So, my grandfather was gone by this point, but I do remember thinking like, oh my God, Grumpy would be so upset if he knew, like, he thought I was going to go to Yale, and here I am, I'm not even going to a community college. I did a community college course here and there. Um, but I was just kind of like going from job to job. I had a boyfriend, who, like, one serious boyfriend who I really was pretty in love with. He was like one of the exceptions, if you will. But he was also very abusive. And I'm not sure exactly yet, like, if that is part of it. I think there's a part of it where I'm attracted to the anger or the potential for anger, but it's not because I want to be hurt. It's because I need a challenge, and I think that I can fix this person and, turn them into, tame the lion, so to speak. Like, and we're taught that growing up, right? Beauty and the Beast. That was one of my favorite movies, and that's what it was about. If you take this beast and you're good enough and treat him well enough, he'll turn into a prince and treat you right. Um, but yeah, so it was it was an abusive relationship, but it was also, I I was that's when I started really drinking quite a bit. He was Dominican, so I started hanging out with, like, basically my entire circle was Dominican. The drink of choice in that culture, or that, not sorry, that particular microculture, if you will, the Dominican population in this small little town I was in Connecticut, it was a lot of alcoholics, high number of them. And their drink of choice was Brugal, which was this very strong Dominican rum. And I remember I was able to chug it with no chaser. And like, it was impressive to people, like it was impressive to the men. And so I started, like, I loved doing that, like chugging the Brugal and like showing off that how much I could drink. And I always drank, you know, probably more than other people, I would say. Um, More than the average, not more, like I wasn't the one who drank the most, but in a room full of people, or if you were in a bar, the group that's in the corner that's partying the hardest, I'd always be in that group. I would never be on the other side. Even if I came in with the group that was on the other side, I'd end up on the partying hard side at some point. Like that, it was always the case. Anytime I drank, it was to get hammered, pretty much, especially in the beginning. And the other common denominator was that anytime I got into had a problem situation occur, a trauma happen, alcohol was involved. I heavily associate alcohol with trauma, because I had I had a lot of things happen over the course of this time period, and like things that happen to young women who don't know how to advocate for themselves, and get very intoxicated. A lot of stuff happened, and every single time something happened, it was alcohol. Alcohol was there. It was at the seat of the crime, so to speak. So it's not like, you can look at something and be like, well, this happened because I got drunk and XYZ. No, it's not the case. But if you look at the situation in its entirety, which is something I've only been able to do because of this program, because for so many years, that time of my life, along with so much of my life, I have just had shrouded in this veil of shame, and I have had this fear of even lifting the veil, seeing what's under there, because I just assumed it was just filled with examples of how disgusting and deplorable I was. And I already felt that way. And I didn't want to, I was like, I can't feel any lower. And in fact, doing my moral inventory, at the same time, I'm doing a big therapy program has helped me so much to see to see the opposite. Really, like, I don't know. Sorry, I got off track there for a second. Yeah, it's because of the program that I can look back on these memories and understand, what actually happened, and not blame myself for things that I didn't, I may have, as Boots, I've heard Boots say, voluntold myself into some situations for sure. You know, I was in the places I was in with the people I was with because I was an addict and I was drinking and using. And that was motivating my behavior, not, surrounding myself with intellectuals or people who were trying to solve world peace. It was people who wanted to party and party hard, as Andrew WK says. But yeah, hold on. I hope you guys don't mind if I vape. I know it's very unprofessional, but so that was and like I said, that kind of goes back to, surrounding yourself with people like this. But in any case, that was my early 20s. I ended up getting pregnant with my daughter when I was 21. Um, at that point, I stopped being an addict basically. When I was pregnant, I, I, you know, it arrested the development of the disease, so to speak. Right, leading up to the pregnancy, um, I had actually started adding cocaine and then heroin to it. And I had started really doing speedballs like 2 weeks before I got the positive pregnancy test. And I found that combination of cocaine and heroin and alcohol was like that. I knew that was going to take me straight into oblivion. I could feel it. And so when I got that positive pregnancy test, even though it was not something I had planned, didn't necessarily, want to have a relationship with the father, I took it as my way out. It was my lifeline, because I knew I couldn't live for myself and I couldn't stop taking drugs for myself, or stop drinking for myself if I could for a baby. And if I made myself keep the baby, and then I could stop killing myself and become a mom. And so that's what I did. I had my daughter on December 30th, 2006. She was born on the day that Saddam Hussein was executed. That's one of my first memories is breastfeeding her and watching the footage of that. um, she was absolutely beautiful. Her name means gift from God. It's Mattea. I actually chose her name the literal day I found out that I was pregnant. I chose my girl's name because the first thing I did was like go across the street and get like a tabloid magazine because, I just wanted to, instead of the internet, that's what we use to like dissociate and doom scroll when we find out something that's like, oh shit, you don't want to deal with it right now. So I had this tabloid magazine and I'm going through it, and Mira Sorvino, the actress, has a daughter named Mattea Angel. And I was already thinking of this child as an angel. And the name Mattea just popped out at me because her father is Italian. And I looked up the meaning and it said gift from God. And that was it. I knew that was her name. So she was born shortly after I turned 22. She was just beautiful, beautiful baby, perfect. Just such a good child, just from the start. And I really was dedicated to being a mom. She really, I started doing what they call mommy blogging around that time. There was a forum online. It was like pregnancy forum or pregnancy and parenting forum that I was part of. and like that kind of became my social outlet, so to speak. I didn't date, didn't do anything like that. My circle was basically the other mommy bloggers that I was associating with on these blogs. And there's a lot of drama involved in these mommy blogs, believe it or not. So there was some kind of like community hopping and stuff. But I mean, this was during all this time period, like I wouldn't say I was necessarily like developing as a person per se, but I wasn't engaging in any alcoholic behaviors. So it's like my disease went into some type of arrested development. And then I'll kind of get to it came back into play um, when I got into my first marriage. It was my only marriage. So my daughter was 6 years old at this time. I had graduated LPN school um, and LPN licensed practical nurse in America. It's a step below a registered nurse, and it's like an 18-month program. And my daughter was around 6. I had met someone through my blogging, which had now expanded into more like politics and public current events type of stuff. And I was getting more of a following, more of a profile. And one of the people who was following me had messaged me and about something I had written that was related to I started writing about PTSD stuff. And he said he had PTSD himself and needed some help. And we started talking on that level. And pretty soon it turned romantic. And long story short, I ended up moving halfway across the country with my 6-year-old daughter to marry, no, not to marry him, but that was the ultimate outcome. I went out there for like a couple months to feel it out, and he was on his best behavior. Although in retrospect, there was a lot of red flags that I ignored. Um, and then I came back and I took my daughter and went back out there and tried to be Betty Crocker and the perfect super wife and super mom. And uh, Ken, the man I went out there for, was a recovering alcoholic when I met him. He had about a year in sobriety, and he, talked a big game about like not only was he in recovery, he chaired AA meetings, and he was this and he was that in the AA community. Which, of course, now that I'm in, now that I know what being part of AA is, I realize it was completely against our principles and our foundation of our principles. Like there is no person above anyone else in any hierarchy, but he made it seem like there was a hierarchy and he was at the top of it. So that was part of him convincing me that he was on top of this sobriety stuff before I came along. So, but he, like I said, we did share meetings, but he was dealing with his fifth DUI at that time. I know that DUI is a part of many people's stories. It's part of mine as well. I think what is unfortunate with his, and I think caused him to like just go out of control, is he had so much privilege because of his political connections through the state that he worked for, and he was able to get away with a lot. So yeah, and because of money too, money and privilege was able to buy him a lot of second, third, fourth, fifth chances. So he didn't get that nudge from the judge that a lot of us need to get into these rooms and get into these rooms for real. And by the time he did get that nudge, he had just, I think, probably advanced too far to really accept it and be part of it. I don't know, but in any case, I think he would have benefited from having done that earlier. I'll put it that way. So in any case, we moved out there, and he was sober when I first got out there. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I just saw the time. Okay, I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to have to wrap this up. So throughout this marriage, hold on. Basically, I became alcoholic throughout this marriage because it became emotionally abusive first, and then and verbally abusive also. And then it became increasingly abusive in other ways. And I see that it's 541. And to be honest with you, I don't know how that happens. That's crazy to me. And I think what I'm going to do, if that's okay, Christy, is I just maybe keep it here for tonight, other than to just say, to bring it forward just a moment, because that's my past. And the past does repeat itself. And because of this program, I was able to recognize that the past is repeating itself in my life again. Because this relationship that brought me into these rooms of AA when I first got here to a new spiritual family was the relationship that I thought was the most perfect thing I could ever had, that I had ruined, that I had destroyed. And my last chance at what I didn't say out loud was a marriage with a man, which I wanted now, not just for like all the aforementioned reasons, but I wanted another child because I felt like basically, well, I missed out on so much of my daughter's life because of my disease, my mental illness, and being involved in my other stuff. Sorry, didn't mean to do that so loud. But you know, there's many reasons why I felt that as like a significant loss, and then through the power of this program and having you know, meetings to go to, and people and a spiritual advisor who understands me and can help me find the answers to the questions that I have. And because I've been doing a moral inventory, which teaches me about myself. When somebody tries to lie to me about myself, I know the truth. Because I don't have alcohol to dull the blade of the emotional wound that's inflicted on me, I can recognize it now. I used to just, I go back through texts with this relationship that I had, this best relationship of my life that I was so desperate to salvage like a week ago. And it's like, my God. And I just tolerated it. How did I ever tolerate it? I tolerated it because I drank. And that made it okay. It made it funny. We could joke around it. It kind of made me less soft. But I don't need to be that person today. I can be soft. And I don't need to depend on anybody to have companionship because I'm never alone. I have this group, this program, this family. I have my own family of origin who loves and supports me, especially in my recovery. I've regained the connections with them so much. My sister is pregnant. She's having a baby in October. I'm going to be an auntie. I'm looking forward to being the fun, full, sober auntie. My brother just had a baby also. His name is Jordan. He's so cute. He needs to be like a baby model, I swear. I'm like I said, I just finished doing DBT. I'm probably going to end up doing another round of it but I just got so much out of it the first time. I graduated and learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot of skills. The job that I have now is one that I've grown into and grown to love. It's one that my higher power led me to directly in such a amazing, hit you over the head way that I'm like, to this day, it's blows my mind. I don't know. One day when I tell the entire story, I can't wait to do that because that's the way my higher power works. I think is he's shown himself in my life in so many ways so that I can, through retelling what happened, show his presence and show his message. And that's such a privilege to be able to carry that message and to be sober and to be here with you guys. So I am so happy to be here at 6 months. I am more dedicated to my sobriety than I've ever been. I am more excited to work this program than I have ever been, and happy, joyous, and free, man. And also officially done with dating men. So I guess I'm gay, guys. All right, that's it. I'm out. Love ya.